The Fashion Design and Merchandising program started as one of the programs being offered by Benilde in their evening classes during the 90s. But now, as the school has grown and the industry has evolved, now it's a standalone program. It is a Bachelor of Arts in Fashion Design and Merchandising. We see the program being unique among other fashion schools in the Philippines as we take a holistic approach in our education. We concentrate in the design process together with the business aspect of the industry. We are the only school in the Philippines that really concentrates in textile and surface design. In fact, our pool of faculty finished textile design abroad and also chemists who have practiced in the industry as fashion designers, who have finished degrees abroad, who have taken master classes, who are specialists in their field and are able to transfer their knowledge to our students through pattern making, sewing, and draping classes, wherein all of these facilities are available also in our school. They're in fact addressing both the science in fashion and of course the design aspect of the material itself. So we also take different trips, may it be local or international. We also have field trips in garment factories like big Korean factories here in the Philippines so they can understand the process of producing their clothes. There's only one benchmark to know if you really have succeeded in the industry. It is by having your own target market at the end. At the end of the day, no matter how good your design is, unless somebody buys your product, you won't be considered successful in this industry. You have to sustain your business and your design aesthetics to be really part of the industry and really leave a legacy.
Our course is Fashion Design and Merchandising. We're the first school or we're the pioneer school that offers this type of program. We don't just cover the design side of the industry, but we also cover the business side. And that's the edge of our program compared to the other schools in the Philippines. I started as a stylist first, right after graduation. I wanted to be in the design side of the industry, so I became a wedding gown designer. And then the doors opened for me for merchandising. So I became a merchandise manager for the top retail companies in the Philippines. I focus more on the fashion line development, retail management, visual merchandising. I teach because I want to inspire. I wanted to share what I've learned when I was working in corporate side of the fashion industry. We don't just teach for a living. We are immersed in the industry, so we share what we know and what we've learned to our students. When you teach something that you're passionate about, you think would influence the students or future designers or future merchandisers, it makes everything better.
The Fashion Design and Merchandising program in Benilde is one of the most comprehensive fashion courses you can take in the Philippines because it covers a wide variety of areas in the industry. It's a very diverse course. You really kind of get a feel of different aspects in the industry. The interest in fashion has always been there. Ever since I could remember, I've always loved clothes and loved drawing clothes. After graduating, the main career that I want to focus on is fashion design, but I'm open to any other career that comes my way. Besides school, I work professionally. I co-own a store in Escolta, and I have a line of clothes there, a line of hand-painted tote bags and leather accessories. I also do made-to-order designs under my own name on the side, and I design for a line called Interweave, which is under Habi, and we use hand-woven textiles from Negros. It's a lot, but I love everything that I do, and I love the flexibility that Benilde gives to be able to do that. Benilde, I think, is a special case because unlike any other campuses, you can look however you want, and there's not really much judgment. It helps you not be afraid to express yourself. That freedom of expression kind of pushes you further in terms of your creativity, pushes your critical thinking as well. The people that work here, they help you explore what you're capable of and explore what you can do in the industry that you want.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the top one, we'd just like to thank College of Sansó for this great opportunity. Please, thank you so much. It started again with a conversation with greetings. It took years before this inclusion. It's so ironic that it happened during a pandemic, such a time as this. Thank you, Sir Kiko, for giving us this opportunity. We congratulate all our students for giving their effort, their best. And we commend the Fashion Design and Merchandising program for evolving. Thank you to our faculty, our mentors, Ms. Vicky Katigbak, AJ Tukpalan, Ms. Christine Bennett, Ms. Lydia, Ms. Tal, all the participating faculty for making this happen. Indeed, we're very, very happy. It's our first time, and we congratulate. Of course, thank you also to our parents, for supporting their children, for making them achieve their goals in life. May this be not only the last, but this is the beginning, of paving way for creativity and Philippine talent. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this talk, which is about Sansó Textile Designs, and it's in relation to the exhibition that we have here at Fundación Sansó, which is a collaboration with the Benilde Fashion Design and Merchandising Program, and in relation to this book that we have published, Sansó Textile Designs, 1950s to 1960s. Joining us today are two of the three authors of this book. The first guest is the program chair of the Benilde Fashion Design and Merchandising Program, Ms. Olive Lopez. She is a textile designer. She studied it in the UK and she practiced it in the US, and now she's guiding the students at the Benilde College Fashion Design and Merchandising Program on textile and surface design. And also another colleague of mine, she is my mentor, and she used to be the curator of the Intramuros administration and also the Ayala Museum, where she was my boss. And she's the author of the books Nipis, Textiles in the Philippine Colonial Landscape, and Dreamweavers. So let's all welcome Ms. Sandy Castro and Ms. Olive Lopez. Hi, Sandy. Hi,
Hello.
Olive. Hello.
Hello, Ricky. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for inviting
joining us
me.
It's our pleasure, and really it's an honor to have this talk with you guys. Particularly, we have that exhibition and this book to talk about. So I'd like to ask you first if there's anything you'd like to share about yourself before we go into the questions. Sandy, would you like to share anything else aside from the introduction that I gave you?
About myself. Well, now I'm freelance. I'm independent. I don't work with any museum anymore.
And you're
I'm
based in
actually
the US.
semi-retired. Yeah,
You're
and I
based in New York.
live in upstate New York. So my best pastime is looking into Philippine material for research. It's like I never left my job there.
Actually, I'm so grateful for your Facebook posts. I'm learning a
Oh,
lot about
really?
the material. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
good,
learning about
good.
material in museums and libraries in the US and even in Europe from your Facebook posts.
I thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, but you've been focused on textiles for a lot of years already. What started you off with your love for textiles?
Oh, it was because in the Intramuros Administration collection, they had an outstanding piña collection. It's very high quality. So when I did my thesis in the UK, I was looking for a similar collection. And luckily, there was one in the Victoria and Albert Museum. Yeah. So, you had the choice of doing a study of a collection or doing a museum education project. And I saw that. I said, oh, I'm going to study the collection instead.
And
So,
that
and then
informed your book. Yeah.
yeah, it also led me to other collections in the nearby countries in Europe. Of course, we didn't have internet at that time. I would consult the directory of museums. It was like 5 inches thick. And then I would look at all the textile museums and I'll pick which ones I'll write. I'd be so excited when they say, yeah, we have a piña collection. Yeah.
How do those compare against what we have here in the Philippines?
A lot of those are like made for the foreign market. And a lot of them are in pristine shape because they were already in the museum a long time ago. So they have the best climatic conditions for the objects.
Yeah,
And
and
also
this
the ones in the Philippines, the one in IA is in very good condition. But I also borrowed a lot from private collections when I did nipis. So the conditions were various. And some of them were already worn a lot. So not as good in shape. But
worn like
amazing.
sinuot, right? Not worn out.
Yeah. So it was amazing. All the designs that showed up. There's not just calado, there's sombrado, there's supplementary weft technique. That was the most common one. So it
Thank
was
you.
nice to survey it through actual collections, not just through books.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. We will get back to that because your essay in the book is about the production of textiles and you could share with us more details later. Olive naman is basically a kapitbahay. She's my neighbor in Mandaluyong. Yeah,
Oh,
and
good.
yeah, Olive, I don't know any textile designers except for you and for Sansó. To be honest, I don't know anyone
Wow.
Really?
personally. So, can you tell us more about textile design and when you studied it, what you do, and how do you apply
Yeah,
it?
sure.
Yeah, and what school in the UK offers that?
Yes, I actually finished my master's in University of Arts London, particularly in Chelsea College of
Yeah.
Arts. It was a blessing that I got a scholarship, vice chancellor scholarship for this master's program in specifically in textile design. How I got into textile design, it was a journey.
I was a graduate of Fine Arts in UP Diliman. And as you know, as a studio major, we deal with 2D canvas painting, most of which is painting, paper, printmaking, etc. For some reason, I just got bored because I found the canvas just one block. It was always defined by boundaries. And for some reason, I got into textiles, primarily because maybe I just like to touch things, and textiles had that kind of comfort, a good hand, of feeling, when you touch it. And I didn't realize that there's really a discipline and even a profession in textile design. So I studied in the US for like it's an associate degree in Los Angeles. And that led me to a job to work for about 10 years in textile design, in the textile business in Los Angeles, serving the fashion and interior design market. So when Ricky actually when we met, I think that I was quite new when I returned back here in the Philippines. It was synchronicity, I'd have to say, because textile design was at my heart, but at the same time, I was trying to latch on, I guess, to make it, I guess, more relevant, because I came from there and then I'm here, and I couldn't find any community to share my insights and passion, and experiences with textiles. But I guess that's how life is, it's a small circle, and Fundación Sansó, and Sansó himself, Filipino, Spanish is a textile designer. So right then and then there was that click, and was an interest, to share a same vocabulary of what textile design is. And hence, Ricky asked me to write a book. I'm sorry, not to write a book, but to write, something about the textile works of Sansó. Yeah.
And on that note, can you tell us what you found about Sansó's textile designs in relation? Like, can you share with us some of the things that you found out?
Yes. First things first, visually, when you showed me the collections of Sansó, I knew it's definitely a textile design form of art. Okay. A lot of maybe people would classify it also as decorative art because it's definitely different from fine art. The most common cue that it's classified as a textile design is the repetition of a motif. Okay, a motif is one set of an element. In the background now, you will see that the motif is probably that cluster of a brushstroke, the pink, blue, and the green, and you will see it's repeated. And the way it's repeated, there is also a science or a design layout to it. So for this one, the way I see it, it's actually an all-over repeat. Okay, and it's repeated, I would have to say this is block side repeat. So it goes that way. A half drop, you will see that the repeat is here and then it will drop by a half. And then it will start its own repeat. Okay. And then you will also, I noticed also it has a stripe orientation. That's very common in textile design layout. But majority of which is the works of Sansó is an all-over print, which is understandable because that actually fits, the requirements also when you start printing it as rolls of fabric, in the factory. Okay, so we have to follow that set of repeat for it to be able to produce as yardages. I also noticed the colors. If you will look at the Sansó prints, I think Sansó knew, what colors to put together. Most of the time, his colors belong to the same family. Warm colors, orange, reds, and just a pop of white. And then the other sets are more in the cool colors. There's also a blending of like how we see it in the background, a little bit of the cool and the warm color and a touch of the muted green. Primarily because in printing, you don't want your colors to become muddy. So you have to be able to choose colors also that will work well when it's printed, as rolls of fabric in the factory. In terms of the designs that the Sansó chose, it's definitely a stark contrast from how textiles were so rich, during the Renaissance, the opulence of the Baroque period, where it's heavily, like, it's all brocade, etc. Nothing bad about it, but it seemed so unreachable, and as you know, how organic life is, and how art changes, the introduction of printing and the coming of the steam power, in the industrialization period, brought about the feasibility and the possibility of producing textiles in a massive amount, so that the common man can actually afford it. So mas ano na siya ngayon, reachable. And I would have to say, even the elements, the designs, it reaches, to the mass market, a certain target market. It's not just associated to the royalties, the opulence, of royal families, just being able to wear that. But even us, the middle market, even the common man, could actually just have an acquisition of this, and turn it into a beautiful garment, like a summer dress, that could be worn and still be flaunted. So that's the interesting thing that I've seen, when I all look at the collection of Sansó.
Wow, actually, that was so insightful, Olive. Not just about the textile design. What you said about his color combinations actually apply a lot to his paintings as well. And I really think that the textile designs, the experience in textile designs, particularly in choosing what colors to use, really affected his work as a painter as well. Because he was making textile designs from the 1950s to the 1960s. As a painter, he was using only black or black and blue from the 1950s to like early 1960s. And when he stopped textile designs in the middle or late 1960s, that was when he started using acrylic paint and then putting a lot of color in his works. And now he's really known for particular color palettes, the blues that are like turquoise.
Yes.
And yeah, so I really think that the textile design, his experience there, was a cornerstone to his practice as a painter as well. Yeah.
Oh, if I may add, Ricky, I also noticed the medium that he used for textile design. There's definitely versatility. I could tell a gouache technique that was used, watercolor. That's why there's some translucency in some of the brush strokes. Like I like this one. This is probably gouache, where the underneath color could also be seen, from the pink on top, and then the dark, either way. Sorry, the pink, which is lighter, and the blue on top, and then the overlap actually shows that the layering of the colors.
I think Olive just got cut off for a bit, but
Right.
yeah, it's so interesting how she's explaining the medium to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Olive, speaking on the about the medium, I've also noticed, kasi as a painter, after he stopped textile design in the late 1960s, he started using acrylic on paper and acrylic on canvas, which was, kasi before that, he was using oil, which was, it takes longer to dry and you have to work
Yes.
at it at a longer time, or as at acrylic, he was able to produce faster as well, which I think is also an interesting development in which could be traced to the way he was doing textile designs. Kasi di ba sa textile designs, textiles, the industrialized method of cutting it into stages, na-apply din niya in his art. So for me, this is a very important development in his career. Yeah. Well, Sandy, can I pick your brain naman, kasi your focus is on parang mostly colonial textiles, but you're also into how textile is produced. And you wrote an essay in this book about what you researched on what was happening on textile production in the 50s and 60s. Maybe you could share with us what you were able to find out.
Yeah, I was also researching what methods of printing were they using before the industrial period. And so I have this to show the students. It's, a design block, a wooden block for printing in India. So they also took that Asian concept um, to Europe. So it was practiced early. And then later, they also used copper plate, like what they use for printing books. They had bigger ones for textiles, of course, bigger plates to stamp on a design. But then it was very cumbersome because, you have to do it several times. You have to be very careful where you put it on the textile. So I think it was in the 20s or 30s when they started to do screen printing. So maybe a lot of your students know that technique already. They could have practiced that. Well, you have a screen and you have a frame, and then you have the design on the screen, and then the negative part is going to be blocked, and you have a squeegee to press it onto the fabric. So they also had that on an industrial level, but they had big screens that they would carry by hand, also very cumbersome until later, around, I think it was around the 50s when they mechanized it. And they didn't have to keep changing the screens because at first you could only do one color per screen. Then they also had rotary printing. That was also like copper plate printing. It's just that they put it in a cylindrical form and they would roll it on the fabric. That one was also hard because you did it with one color at a time. So finally, they had a rotary screen printing method. Instead of metal on the cylinder, they had the screen. So it's combining the screen printing method and the rotary method. And I think then they had that industrialized. I mean, they could produce by mass production.
Yeah. Mr. Sansó always told us that he worked with Staron and Synergy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you researched anything about these textile producers during
Yeah,
the
in
course?
the article, I mentioned the Bianchini Ferrier, which was
Yes,
based in Lyon, France. That's one of the big ones, even in the time of Raoul Dufy from France. He was an artist. They asked him to do designs because he was very good with prints. And then the other one was Staron. I see them in a lot of old magazines. They would have like a cover for the fashion designer, but they would also have the name of the textile manufacturer in the bottom.
I
So
see.
it was also very important. The textile manufacturer was advertised as well as the designer. And then Abraham AG, that was based in Zurich. They were called converters because they were not just a textile mill. They would put their artistic input into a textile. They'll farm out different parts of the job, like okay, the dyers will do this, the printers will do this. All kinds of techniques were farmed out, and they would coordinate with the fashion designers to find out what would be good for the next fashion season. So it was very competitive. And while doing this research, I found out that there were two bloggers who went to exhibits showing the designs of Abraham. One of them was in, I think one of the exhibits was in Belgium. I'm not sure. The other one I think was in Switzerland. Because they have a big archive of designs. So it's good if the students who read the article can go to those links and discover more of those famous textile designers.
Yeah, Sandy, you said something about the changing of the season. So you have designers creating fashion design per season, I guess.
Mhm.
And that could only have happened when there was a more or less a mass market for textiles. Who were who did the textile producers make their textile for at that time?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting because after World War II, they had to start all over again. And the US provided a big market, especially because, Hollywood was big. The stars would wear their designs. And yeah, so all 4 seasons, they would have different designs.
And I am guessing kasi Hollywood became like well, it started becoming how do you say this, consumed by the public around after the war na, right? So
Right,
more or
right,
less it was the common person who would see the designs, what the stars would wear, and then try to adapt what they wear for themselves. Parang ganun.
right,
Kasi
right.
I'm guessing, like, especially for us, like, you were studying nipis and the tinalak, they're one off eh. They're parang one is to one. You create the textile, you wear it. Pero this time around, there's an industrial scale production, and it's catering to a mass market, which is being advertised by kunyari, movies, actors,
Right.
actresses, and then you have designers as well. So it became a very specialized niche market pala.
Yeah. And not only that, after the 50s, there were new techniques in like paints. They experimented with a lot of technology. And then there were fabrics that were developed because of the war. Hindi ba yung acrylic? I think it was like
Yeah,
acrylic,
polyester
spandex,
became popular.
polyester. Became
Spandex.
very popular, yeah. And the old paints, the old dyes wouldn't adhere to this type of fabric. So there was a lot of experimentation going on in the US for that. And
So
then they even discovered like neon colors. That's I believe that was done in the US. That was discovered in the US.
I
Day
think,
glow printing.
yeah, it was so fortuitous pala that Sansó was in Paris, which was one of the fashion centers of the world at the time that he was in. Kasi at that time, fashion was growing, right?
Right.
In Paris, you have people like Balenciaga, whom
Oh
Sansó
wow, yes.
got to work with. What was fashion like then, Olive? Can you tell us what it was like in the world in the 1950s?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, 50s was post-war. It was World
Mhm.
War II right before. So if we try to look back first, there was, I mean, fashion then was like, in terms of textiles, they were rationing fabrics. There was scarcity. And post-war was the time where they have to pick up themselves, literally. And if I remember, Christian Dior introduced the new look, a
Yes.
cinched-waisted woman,
Right.
to epitomize who the woman was, during the time.
Right.
Became so very famous, popular, the new look. They call it the new
Breakfast at
look.
Yeah.
Tiffany's. Parang ganong silhouette.
Oh,
Cinch
cinch waist,
waist
yeah. Kasi
and
prior to
very
that, then
broad skirt.
Ricky, 30s, 40s flapper era, it was also a rebellion. Nakakatawa siya because the flapper era was a rebellion to the age where I think was it during Renaissance, Baroque, where it was also like tight-fitting clothes, huge,
Yeah, Victorian
skirts,
period.
the pannier skirts, as wide as, that's why if you look at the architecture in Paris, the doors were wide,
Yeah, yeah.
apparently to accommodate all these huge,
Yeah, the
skirts,
paniers.
the pannier, yeah. And then going back, as I mentioned, the flapper era was a rebellion, an answer to that. You know, you have to free, that the clothes have to
The
be freed
body.
from the body. Yes. So 1950s, Balenciaga was also there. You know, the Spanish couture, more on sculptural shape. You know, in terms of
Oh,
clothing.
yeah.
And as what Sandra said, that's true. This is the time now where women were back in the household. It's like there's an American dream look of how a woman would look like, you know, and the availability again of the fabrics to the common man. It's much affordable. They
Right.
can buy interesting, you know, a varied selection of prints that they could wear into summer dresses, you know, even that still mimicking the vintage looking cinched waist, you know, and quite a full volume of a clothing. That was like a typical of an American dream. And then it's really very interesting, you know, uh, how how textiles and fashion actually interrelate, work well together. You know, they had also the summer look, and then bright colors for the summer period, and then towards fall, winter, spring. Towards fall, winter, usually plaids are very essential. Okay. These are more appealing to the mass market. And of course, the colors would vary. Again, more on a darker hues, like perhaps purple, blues, etc. You know, but of course, again, fashion now has evolved. You know, colors are dictated, you know, by these fashion designers. But that's how actually, in a way, fashion played out. You know, in the 50s, 60s. As Sandra has mentioned, I agree. The department store already came about. You know, there's also Marks and Spencer in Britain, if I'm not mistaken. Lucien Day, I think one of also a
Oh,
textile design.
yes.
Very, if you
I
look at
like
her
her.
prints and yes,
Yeah.
collections, it's a lot of graphic based. But
Yeah.
that was because that spoke of the times, you know, the
Yeah.
zeitgeist. That was the
Yeah.
spirit of the times. Yeah, those types of motifs. It was just interpreted by various textile designer, and one of which is Sansó. You know,
Yeah.
he had his version to reflect the spirit of the times. Lucien Day also, as well as the other textile designers.
Yeah, I
You,
saw some of Sansó's works. Hey, this reminds me of the Lucian Day,
Mm,
isn't it?
that's
The
right,
use
no?
of the pressed flowers or the
Yes.
leaves, the dried leaves.
you know, Sandy, you also brought something interesting kanina. You said the textile printers, the textile makers worked with people like Doofy, who was a printmaker.
Yes.
Yeah, was it
They,
common for fashion houses to collaborate with artists, visual artists, and printmakers?
I think
Yeah.
they started doing that to popularize the textiles. They invited different artists. Even Picasso was asked to do some. I remember. And Salvador Dali.
Yeah, I remember kasi ano, Sanso also said that he got his first break at first exhibition in Paris through Elsa Schiaparelli, who was famous for working with Salvador Dali, right? And
Oh, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. But I was wondering kasi you were saying something about Luffy being a printmaker, and Sanso prior to textile design, he was really focused on printmaking talaga. In the from 1954 until 1968, he focused on etching in particular,
That's
and
right.
if
Yeah.
yeah, baka may
That's why I
kinalaman
think he
din
was
siguro.
suited to this. He was suited to this genre because he was strong in printmaking.
Hmm. Galing ano, all of this ano confluences of events, both in
Right.
his personal life and in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
And
is the archive of his designs, is it with the foundation?
well, ano we have around 40 of his works, but he has been having a resurgence of exhibitions, commercial exhibitions of his textile designs. He started selling his textile designs in the mid 2000s. I remember going to Greenbelt 5. Tapos
Oh.
merong exhibition doon. And then later on, successive selling exhibitions then of his textile designs. And now we're even collaborating with Septième Rebel. Robbie Santos is the head designer, and they reinterpreted some of his textile designs into fashion. So Fundación is also playing some part in promoting his textile designs because we think it's an important part of his artistic body of work, even though it's decorative arts nga.
Mm. So I have a question. Sorry, Olive.
Oh, no, I was just sorry. I was just interested, do you actually have the actual fabrics?
No, we have the actual textile designs. But
the
the fabrics,
designs.
in terms of the fabrics, we only have some of the scarves that he made. But these were produced in Switzerland.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have two of those. And those were different kasi the textile designs here are very colorful. But the scarves that he produced are more like his etchings, very rich in line work, but very black and white. Yeah.
Speaking of scarves, during 50s to 60s, because prior to that, the wearing of hats, was very popular also among women. But there was a trend that came in lieu of wearing hat, they wore scarves. Perhaps that's why I guess it's also, the proliferation of textile design, fabrics, that's why perhaps scarves were also marketable during that time. I mean, now that we're talking, I'm able to connect things, yes.
Yeah, especially in the Europe and the US where you really need a scarf. Here I'm wearing a scarf.
That's true also.
It would really sell.
Sandy, I'll show a video later na lang. The exhibition that we have, our mannequins have scarves that were designed by one of the teachers of, so parang sakto pala for the theme yung ginawa natin accessorizing.
So I have a question, technology-wise. So Sansó did his work, his textile patterns on, was it paper?
Yeah.
On paper, and then he gave them to the manufacturer. How do they put it on the fabric? Was it screen printing? Because that was the most popular method, I think, at that time. I'm guessing it's screen printing.
Can I just share? Can I just share something? Kasi a lot of his textile designs are really freehand and they don't really tile well. I discovered this kasi we had to print some of his textile designs so that Robbie could actually use the tela. So we had to select portions of it and then retain the general look, the general, like how it was dispersed, but we had to be more mathematically precise so that when you cut the fabric, hindi na puputol yung design. So I'm guessing it's more like parang I don't know anything about textile production per se, but I'm guessing it was more to get the color combination, the pattern, and the look, and then the textile house would have to reinterpret it in screen print. What do you think, Olive?
Yeah, that's right. You're right, Ricky, when you said the mathematical layout. It really has to be mathematically laid out, wherein there is a specific measurement. So for example, one repeat is 1 inches by 1 inches. So if you tile it together, just imagine a box of 1 inch by 1 inch and the polka dot design is in the middle. So when you repeat that several times and it's a block repeat, so you will see dotted lines horizontally and vertically aligned, just like a grid. If it will become a half drop, that 1 by 1 inch box, imagine it, half of it, so you will have that alternating look of a polka dot. So basically, that is the mathematical structure behind textile design. You really have to be able to have that. Otherwise, you will have those mismatch or gaps, when it's printed, and that will cost a lot of money for the manufacturer. And also, I agree with colors. You have to set it because, as I mentioned, their colors, when screen printed, they become muddy. And screen printing, as Sandy has said, has limitations. If I'm not mistaken, based on my work experience in the US, the maximum is 12 colors. But just always remember, the more colors, the more expensive the production
Right.
would cost. Okay, that's why you have. There are times wherein mas maganda siguro yung colors of the same family, on the reds, yellows, orange. So when they layer up together, it will create its own color, color effect. I remember napapagalitan ako most of the time ng my boss with that, because there are some colors na when they layer up, it will create a shadow. And technically, maganda yun for fine arts or painting, purposes. But we're talking about a textile that will be produced for mass market. So you don't want to see an error, an error, based on the design. So those are the mathematical things. And then light color, the usual in screen printing, light color first, up to dark. Yeah. And then I remember also, I wish Sansó would, if we are to bring back the production of printing to the now, I'm glad that there's also what Septiembre Rebel has been using, the digital printing. Because digital printing, you don't have to strip the colors. It can print just like how a paper printer could work. It will print it as is. But again, it's quite expensive, and the yardages is quite limited. In terms of fashion, I'd say the selvage to selvage, it's very limited. Unlike in the factory, it's really the standard selvage where you don't waste much fabrics when you create certain garments.
Yeah, I have a question. I was wondering, like, if you have that capability in the Philippines, like you said, it's kind of limited, salvage to salvage wise. Are there any like not so high tech methods of printing that small studios can use?
Actually, can I just share? The first time we tried to recreate Sansó's fabrics on fabric was with the help of this team called Hocus. They are silk screen printers, and they usually silk screen posters, parang collectible posters, and we gave them a whole roll of a width na, what do you call it, 72 ba yun? The wide width fabric, and they screen printed the flowers and so on it. So meron naman mga small screen printers that are available, and you could source them through Facebook. Would you believe, Sandy? So
Really?
Facebook ko na lang sila hanapin.
Wow. Oh, just recently, a month or two ago, I went to the Guggenheim Museum. There was a fundraiser there by the Hearts Autistic Foundation. This has been going on for a while. Piña is painted on by children with autism. Yeah, and then this designer in California, Anthony Legarda, sorry, turned them into outfits. I have a video of that in one of my posts. They were very nice prints. I wish I could buy or afford them, but they were hand painted.
Actually, Sandy, when I get to show you the winners of the students who won the competition, hand silk screened and hand painted their textiles, inspired by the textile designs of Sansó.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, I think the fashion design and merchandising program of Benilde has been teaching them surface design nga, right, Olive? Maybe you could share with us what techniques you've been teaching your students so that the public will also know more about FDM.
Yes, that's
Hirap talaga ng internet sometimes.
right. FDM.
You have to
Ayan,
repeat what you said.
lagging ba?
Kasi
Yeah. Go
You
ahead,
favored
Olive.
Oo
point.
nga, I noticed, yeah. Yes. Textile design actually refers to the preparation of producing and designing the surface of the fabric. Okay, we start with a textile design one, where students learn the textile construction. So it's very important to know the type of fabric, construction of fabric. As you know, textile is composed of fibers and threads. So you have to be able to identify if it's woven, a knit, or it's non-woven. Okay, and then we move on to learning dyeing techniques, particularly natural dyes. And then the third one, which is actually what we collaborated with Sansó, is surface design 3, FDM Text 3. This is the part where it's really surface design, meaning we deal with the surface of the fabric and we teach them varied techniques to design it. So what are these techniques? It could be pleating, where you actually produce three-dimensional surface, by folding the fabric. There's also another way, which is smocking. Smocking is, I think, ever since I was in grade school, I learned that already.
It's
A
nice. I
technique,
like that.
yes, it is nice. It's very homey, uh, type of technique. It gives a stretch to a
Yeah.
fabric because of the stitching, right? But actually, it gives also a three-dimensional look onto the surface. And then the students have a free hand to interpret smocking later on, because you follow smocking, there's also a mathematical um, discipline behind it. But later on, once you master it, you can do a abstract smocking, by pulling the threads and create 3D surface. Then we also teach them, yes, screen printing. Okay, so this is the part where we try to mimic, using the factory printing, by using, like what Sandy said, silk screens, or any type of what do you call this, like stencils. Okay, we can also use that. And then we also have embroidery, very,
Oh,
very
nice.
important. Yes, because once they learn all these and they start to do a mixed media technique, then their textiles become so unique, an expression to their own creativity. And then we're also trying to do digital printing, as I mentioned. Once they know already the traditional way of printing, which is also block printing, which is also part of it. Then we shift to the new technologies, which is digital printing, like sublimation printing. And hopefully, we could introduce also 3D printing, because 3D printing can create also a surface, which could be manipulated, to create parts of a garment. Yeah. So
Nice.
for Sansó's collaboration, perhaps Ricky will share later on. You will see combinations of students, as mentioned by Ricky, doing screen printing and then embellishing it with trims, like feathers, like beads. Some actually did digital printing, which is actually good. And then it's really very interesting how these students, you just teach them the basics and then they will give you a masterpiece
Oh, nice.
afterwards.
How long has the program been going on?
And, actually, it's been around for more than a decade.
That's good.
Uh, we've produced already talents, making it so well in the industry, not just in fashion design, but also fashion marketing. Some are even became artists, full-time artists, trying to interpret fine arts through knowledge of fashion and textiles. Very, very interesting. Yeah, so that's how quite old we are. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was wondering, are there a lot of fashion designers there who are using these techniques, designing the textile for their own outfits?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
really?
very, very happy, especially with the Benilde Fashion Design and Merchandising Program. That is really the main thrust, of fashion, the design program is to create textiles, because we always tell our students, yes, you can easily buy fabrics from the Visoria or Fabric Warehouse for that matter, but baka maging katulad lang siya ng what you see out there. You have to be able to manipulate, okay, do interesting fabric manipulations, so that you come up with unique ways, to express what you want for a design collection. So that makes it unique, yeah. Or we even do crochet, by the way, as part, yeah. Very interesting because I remember we have a student, crochet, yes, we're familiar, we use yarns, but what she did, she cut strips of fabric, I think it's tulle fabric, and then she crocheted the tulle of fabric. So it becomes an amazing, not just piece of art, but something that, I guess, how fashion is, you have to always break the boundaries, create something new, and set a trend.
Yeah, I was just going to mention every year, HABI, the Philippine Textile Council.
Yes,
Yeah, they have that Lourdes Montinola Pina Awards contest. Most of the time, they're the weavers who join the contest. So they have different weaving patterns. But I asked them before, can you submit something with like embroidery or other technique? Yes. So I think the students should get into it to liven up that community in Aklan, where they do piña fabrics. I don't see a lot of... I only know of Carlo Eliserio, who did some printing, but
we'll be glad to participate, join, or do a collaboration.
Yeah,
to at least bring in the new blood. You know how this young generation, what magic they can do. Interpret, with the traditions that we have.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when the contest comes up. It's every year.
Yeah, probably that's your next collab, Olive, with HABI.
We'll be glad to,
contestant. Yeah.
Sige. Actually, we're aware of it, but usually we know of it after the competition. In fact, I personally am interested to join, but I'd like definitely the students to participate, and to try the competition. And I could just imagine how they'll be able to, create interesting woven piña interpretations.
Yeah.
On that note, though, we're almost at our 1 hour mark. So I'd like to thank Sandy and Olive for sharing their time with us today. And I'll ask you both first if you have anything else to say or to share. Baka meron kayong upcoming book or projects that you'd like to plug.
Do I have any other projects? Not now, but thanks for inviting me. That was a very enlightening conversation. So let me know when it's going to be aired.
Yes, of course.
You're going to have an announcement in the website.
Yes, we will be sharing this during the duration of the exhibition so that people can see the exhibition by the students and teachers of Benilde Fashion Design and Merchandising, Fashion Design and Merchandising program here at Fundación Sansó, which will run until June 18. And also, of course, they'll be able to check out the book when they come. So Olive, how about you? Baka meron ka pang i-share?
Well, again, many thanks to Fundación Sansó, especially Ricky, Francisco, for this collaboration. As I mentioned, this was like 4 years in the making. I'm glad it came to fruition, it just happened organically. And to tell you the truth, the students are so happy. Even our faculty, they're just so happy of this project. It gave them that boost, especially this time during the pandemic. It could just get so overwhelming, but these kinds of projects actually is what we need, for creative people like our students and our faculty. So again, thank you to Fundación Sansó. And yeah, please keep tuning in to the fashion design and merchandising program for updates. You know, if you're interested, just drop us a line at any time. And definitely, yes, textile design is a profession. You know, it's a decorative art. You know, and I hope, you know, I envision, you know, a younger generation embracing this and coming up with their own collections in the near future.
Thank you, Olive. Actually,
Thank you.
sobrang we're blown away by the work that your students made. And Sandy, ang dami naming natutunan. As always, every time we get to talk, marami akong natututunan, and I'm sure our audience has also learned a lot today. On that note, though, we would like to share the video, the process video of Andre Valera, who won the competition that we had, and then close off with that. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Olive, for your time.
Thank
And
you.
from Foundation Sansó, maraming salamat
Thank you.
sa mga tao na nag-stay on until today. Go ahead, Vero, please play the video. Thank you. Bye.
Good day, I am Andre Valera from ODDM4 under Miss DK Katigbak's Fabric Surface Design class, and I will be presenting my work titled Full Spectrum for FDM X SANSÓ. My work is primarily inspired by cliché ver, which were abstract art experimentations consisting of tiny, transparent photographic slides through the process of etching. I also have a supplementary inspiration for the hat, which is Sansó's flowers, an explosion of grotesque bouquets showing a coral-like outgrowth of vegetation. I related my whole concept to Full Spectrum, a WGSN women's textile forecast for Spring-Summer 2023, embracing joyful, high-energy and anti-conformist textile direction where originality and self-expression are celebrated. This trend explores the key terms of being unexpected and clashing, which is shown in Sir Sansó's etching technique. Sir Juvenal Sansó himself managed to design sets and costumes for 11 operas and musicals, which also aligns to the theatrical and extravagant aspect of the forecast. I decided on a satin mermaid gown and a large hat that encompasses a large surface area where my prints would best be displayed. I used 5 techniques we learned in our fabric design class, starting with silkscreen printing, where I developed a stencil inspired by the shapes found on the original painting and silkscreen printed across 4 yards of satin fabric. I also hand-painted the gaps and eventually silkscreen printed an upper layer unconventionally placed across the textile, as well as adding white spots. I draped a piece of the textile on the bodice and hand-pleated knife pleats diagonally. I also used knife pleats on the hard tool under the mermaid skirt. Using cut fabrics from the skirts, I patchwork pieces together to construct the sleeve, and used a North American spine-looking smocking technique on the one shoulder sleeve. Lastly, I hand-sewed and placed beading across the whole gown and hat using the same color story found on the whole look and added a few clear beads. That would be all for my work titled Full Spectrum. Again, this is Andre Valera. Thank you and have a good day.